Journey to Silius, or Rough World as it was known in Japan, was developed and released by Sunsoft in 1990 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Sunsoft was known for some pretty great NES titles such as Batman, Blaster Master, and Gremlins 2: The New Batch, so it shouldn't be any surprise that Journey to Silius is also a very entertaining game that's worthy of some attention. I'll confess, I'm going into this one blind today as this game passed me by growing up. This title was originally being developed as an 8-bit adaptation of the 1984 James Cameron classic film The Terminator, and was even briefly mentioned in an issue of Nintendo Power. However, somewhere along the way in the development process, Sunsoft lost the license to use the Terminator, but they liked the game so much they swapped out a few skins and finished it anyway. What we're left with is an interesting little side-scrolling shooter set in a post-apocalyptic wasteland where 3.5 floppy disks are still a thing. You play as a character simply named Jay who decides to avenge the death of his father by taking on terrorists who have overrun the world. And all of the terrorists are bloodthirsty machines hell-bent on wiping out mankind, totally not at all like the Terminator. What stands out to me most about Journey to Silius is first and foremost, the music. Even if you're not crazy about the game, it's got one of the best top-to-bottom soundtracks of any 8-bit game ever. There's not a bad tune on the cartridge, and it even keeps playing when you pause the game. I also love the backgrounds and overall art direction of this game. The levels are all fantastic just to look at, with crisp scenery that puts you right into the futuristic setting. From burned out cityscapes to technological interiors that remind me of the Death Star, it all just looks good. And the character sprites are all richly detailed. Most of the enemies are all machines with pretty similar color schemes, but the level of detail is impressive. It's not hard to imagine that at one point this was all set in the futuristic wasteland of the Terminator, and your character probably would have been Kyle Reese, mowing down hordes of cybernetic killing machines. Not just the T-800, but several of the other robots look pretty familiar as well. There even seem to be a few nods to the Alien franchise. The gameplay is pretty straightforward. Run to the right and kill anything that moves. Each level has a mini-boss near the end before you get to the final boss. The mini-bosses drop a special weapon that you can add to your arsenal, and the game employs a weapon select system similar to Mega Man, where you can pick and choose which weapons you want to use for a given situation. Your main weapon has unlimited ammo, but you can run out of ammo for your specials. There are mild difficulty swings between being pretty easy to being downright infuriating. It's one of those games with sections where you can't help but take at least some damage. The enemies do drop power-ups such as refills for your special weapons, but I think they only dropped health like maybe 5 times throughout the entire game when I was recording this footage. I'm not even kidding. And the health drops only seem to refill like 2 pegs on your life bar. Aw, come on, seriously? The levels are kinda long too. Definitely longer than average, so oftentimes by the end you're begging for a health drop. Your health bar doesn't refill between the mini-bosses and the big boss at the end of each stage either, so that's a thing. It's a short game and can be beaten in under an hour if you know what you're doing, but it may take you longer than that, and the frustrating difficulty spikes may be a turnoff for some players. Here's a tip. If you push the B button exactly 33 times on the title screen, then push start, you can access a special menu with a sound test, and you can add up to 9 continues. My platoon sergeant used to say, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. I mean it though, this game is hard and not always in that fun, challenging Ninja Gaiden kind of way. There are certain areas with blind jumps or awkward jumps, and the play control isn't always spot on. Like here, for instance, these little cannons pop out of the ground, and you have to jump through this corridor just right to avoid damage. Then they threw another one on the ledge below for good measure. The oversized bosses are super cool to look at, but they can be frustrating as well, since it may take you several tries before you figure out the sweet spot where you can inflict damage without taking too much yourself, which could just mean you'll have to replay the stages a bunch of times. Still though, this game is fun. It's definitely not one of the greatest NES games of all time, but the incredible soundtrack and well-visualized futuristic art direction make for an atmospheric 2D shooter that's more addicting than it deserves to be. The opening cutscene draws you in, it's especially satisfying just running around blowing stuff up, and finding special weapons along the way makes it feel like you're accomplishing something. The destruction of a final boss is an earth-shattering ordeal. And the final stage is on rails, pulling you through a labyrinthian factory which I would venture to guess would have been the Terminator assembly line had Sunsoft not lost the license. If you can make it to the end and defeat the final boss, you're greeted with a sweet final cutscene as well as a nice outro tune rewarding you for a job well done. Not bad, kid. This game is a bit more on the rare side and unfortunately goes for about 25 bucks or more as a loose cartridge. If you find it for cheaper than that at a flea market or garage sale, definitely grab it, but I'm not sure I could recommend going out of your way to track it down and paying full price for it otherwise since it's so short. What do you think? Did you play Journey to Silius growing up, or like me, only discover it recently? What are some other games similar to this you enjoyed as a kid? As always, thank you for watching. Please don't text and drive, and I'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.